Start recording. Welcome, everyone, and good to have you here. Welcome to the Office of Illinois Works 2024 Grantee Manual Session 3. So thank you for joining. The 2024 Grantee Manual is comprised of 14 sections, which we're covering in 3 webinars, and this is the third and last of the 3 webinars. So the target audience for this program, and hopefully you are one of these, are individuals accountable for data entry, data management, pre-apprenticeship program completion tracking, transition support, follow-up services, or any task related to maintaining contact with participants after graduating from your program. Job titles may include, but are not limited to, program administrators, program managers, program coordinators, training coordinators, transition coordinators, data entry coordinators, anyone accountable for curriculum content, and anyone accountable for program reporting. So this is the third and final webinar of this 3-part series that reviews each section. In sessions 1 and 2, we covered sections 1 through 8 of the Grantee Manual, and then this webinar will cover the remaining 6 sessions. My name is Dr. Anna Bedard. I am a training analyst and program coach with Illinois Works. I'm very excited to be part of the program. As those of you who have joined us before know, I am new to the program, but not new to nonprofits. I worked in nonprofits for 15 years and then worked in nonprofit capacity building for another 10 years. I then went on to corporate America and was last in executive development at AbbVie, a major pharmaceutical company, before starting my own consulting business. And I'm now really happy to be back with nonprofits doing capacity building again. And so I want to introduce the other facilitators and then other members of the team. And so when I introduce you, my fellow facilitators, if you could just come on screen and say hello so people can put a face to the name. And I'll present them in order that will be in the agenda. So Dr. Gia Suggs is also a training analyst and program coach with the program. She has been with the program for longer than me, and she's she's amazing, and I think many of you have had the opportunity to interact with her last year. Gina, you want to say hello?
Everyone, and welcome.
Dr. Brian Richard is Associate Director for the Center of Governmental Studies at Northern Illinois University. As you may or may not know, the state of Illinois has a partnership with NIU, Northern Illinois, around program evaluation and a longitudinal study. And Brian will be talking more about that today. Brian, you want to say hello?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Good to see everyone.
And last but not least, Dr. Norman Ruano, the Deputy Director of Illinois Works, and he is the one responsible for this really amazing program design with all of the supports, with the rigor, with everything that you need to succeed. And so, Norman, you want to just say hi so people can see you?
Hi, good morning. Welcome back. Thanks for being here today. It's a pleasure to see you again, and looking forward to covering some very important content and answering some questions you may have. Thank you much.
Thanks, Norman. And then in addition to our presenters, we have other members of the team with us. Dan Martinez, who three grant managers, Dan Martinez, and actually we've got two with us today, I think, Dan Martinez and Monica Pruitt. You want to say hi?
Good
Dan,
morning,
I think
everybody.
great. Hi, Monica. And I'm not sure if Dan is on right now.
Good morning,
Welcome,
everyone.
Rob.
Welcome back.
Awesome, Dan, good to see you. And then Dr. Vera Lee Robinson, who is another training analyst and program coach. Vera was also with the program last year and supported many of you. Vera, you want to say hi?
Good morning and welcome back, everyone.
Illinois Works there's 3 programs. This is one of 3 programs supporting the trades and getting people into the trades. We also have the apprenticeship initiative, and there's a team accountable for that. And the bid credit program, a program that's still in development. We're getting close, and there is another team involved in that. So moving on to the course description, for those of you who have not seen this before, love the pictures, by the way. So Illinois Works was created as a result of Governor Pritzker's historic $45 billion capital plan and his commitment to expanding equity in the Illinois construction workforce. So as an Illinois Works grantee, you're now part of this exciting new initiative that's going to create opportunities for Illinois residents, businesses, communities, and families. As I mentioned, there are 3 programs that are part of Illinois Works. The first is the Apprenticeship Initiative, then the Pre-Apprenticeship Program, which is the second program that was implemented, and then the Bid Credit Program launched late last year. So this training is third, just to reiterate, this is the third in a 3-part series reviewing each section of the 2024 Grantee Manual, so that we can help make sure that you can effectively implement your pre-apprenticeship program. Over the next 3 hours, we will cover the next 6 sessions of the 2024 Grantee Manual. And I keep saying that whole name, 2024 Grantee Manual. Why? Because if you are still looking at the 2023 Grantee Manual, please get rid of it. We've got the link in the chat to the 2024 version. It is updated. There is new and updated guidance. And this is the manual that is your Bible for the rest of the year. It contains all of the information that you need to succeed in the program. And this is what we'll be covering. We'll be covering sections 9 through 14. And that includes professional development and technical assistance, grantees data management, finances, records, and reports, using data for program management and improvement, programmatic monitoring, and audit requirements. And before we go to the next slide, I'm so sorry, I forgot, I wanted to introduce the newest member to our team. My apologies, and that is Dr. Jeff Doolittle, who is our Zoom producer. And so Jeff is managing the slides and just keeping all of us on track today. Jeff, you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. Good to see you today. Nice to be with you.
Thanks, Jeff. Wonderful. And so now we can move on to the course objectives. So by the end of the training, our goals is that you can, first of all, describe the strategic role of professional development so you understand what professional development and technical assistance mean, and are able to adhere to the guidelines of your program track. There's 3 program tracks, so we want you to be clear about what the guidelines are for your track. You'll be able to use the Illinois Works data management process and incorporate that into your program processes, to enter data from each data category into the IWRS, and utilize record-keeping best practices. So I think, in every session we ask, what would you like to get out of it? And people say IWRS. And so this is going to be a great chance for you to get more information about that. Please note that, we've got more objectives here: maintaining participant files, accessing the GATA standard reports, complying with Illinois Works payment model guidelines. You'll be able to effectively use data to support your program management. So important. And use a continuous program improvement model, which is key. It's actually something that we do ourselves here at Illinois Work. And it's really key to always getting better and always doing a great job. Adhering to the Illinois Works programmatic monitoring, which, as you know, is so important to getting paid, and then complying with appropriate audit requirements. So, great. This session is being recorded. It will be available for review at our Illinois Works Partner Guide online, and the link to that partner guide is now being provided for you in the chat. And if you have not done so already, please save that in your browser, because this is a key place where you'll be able to find the information that you need. And so, any questions before we proceed to the next session? If so, feel free to put your question in the chat, or you can unmute. Thanks, Gail.
Anna, no questions in the chat.
Wonderful. All right. So let's go into module 2 here. And this is just, hey, let's get grounded in knowing who's here today, and making sure that you know how to use WebEx, and for us to understand what you hope to learn, so that we can make sure that we address it or know how to help you learn it at a different time if it's not appropriate here. So we use Mentimeter, as those of you who have been in previous sessions know. We use Mentimeter liberally in our programs. It's a really nice way to get engagement, keep you from falling asleep, and to just kind of get to know each other. So we're going to get started, give you a chance to practice using Mentimeter by introducing yourself, and you're going to go in there. And actually, can we just go back real quick? I want to make sure that everybody has that opportunity, and it's in the chat. Oh yeah, so we don't have to stay there, because all the information is now in the chat. You can click on that link. You can also do it on your phone if you prefer to do that. And then put in the code 63598116. Once you're in, then you, next slide, are going to put this intro information: your name, your organization, what's your role, where are you located, and then please, if you could, we'd like to get a sense of who's been attending the previous program. So if you attended session 1, please put an asterisk. If you attended session 2, add two asterisks. So if you attended both, I would put 3. And great, thank you so much. And just so great to know, start to get to know who's in the room here. Welcome. Mimi from Linwood. I see we've got folks who have certainly been to session 2 and session 1, since I gave my grades, from South Cleveland and Mercer County. We've got Sarah, we've got Jackie and Susan from Illinois Foundation of Skills USA, Tina Horn from YMCA, welcome. Kiera Freeman from Rincon, welcome. Brittany Jones, Bethel from Chicago Heights. We've got folks with different titles here. We've got executive directors and program coordinators and administrators. Bill Roberts, welcome. Lana Y of Metro Chicago, welcome. I see we do have some people who have not been on the previous, so that's great for us to know. You know, we want to make sure that everyone is included and can get what you need. Please feel free to ask questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question anytime during the program. You know, even if you are afraid we answered in a previous one, we'll do our best to answer all of your questions. Carmen, welcome from Chicago Land Prison Outreach, and Rochelle and Patricia. And if I am not mentioning your individual name, welcome to you as well. I can't get all of them, but Gail, and I see we've got, you know, Women's Innovation Group. Everyone, welcome. It's great to see who's in the room, and so Now I'd like to do a WebEx tutorial, and just so, especially because we have some folks who have not been on the previous calls, at the bottom of your WebEx screen is where all of your main buttons are that you need to know. So you have a mute button there, and you just toggle that on or off. And we ask that everybody remain on mute so that we don't have interference with the speakers. You can turn on and off your video. Please don't share. Then you've got a raise hand. So if you do have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. You can also raise your hand. Um, it's a nice function if you raise your hand, because then that kind of notifies us. I had somebody in the last section also just sent me a chat because I was the chat monitor. This time our chat monitor is Gia, Dr. Gia Suggs. So you can always ping her, ping any one of us. But if you raise your hand, then it's kind of obvious to everyone. It makes it easy for us to make sure that you get your question answered. We have reactions. If you're loving something, I'm sure we're all familiar with those from Zoom. And then the chat button, importantly, is all the way over on the right-hand side, depending on the size of your screen. It might not say chat. You might just have like 3 little dots. So if you don't see the chat button, please click on the 3 little dots right now, and then click on chat. And just to test it out, I'd like everybody to write in the chat the name of your favorite band, or one of your favorite bands, because it's so hard to choose. Or artist, I should say, because maybe it's not a band. Love this. Home Free. Oh yeah, Earth, Wind and Fire. That's one of my favorites. All right, Steely Dan. Yeah, I love it. Bob Marley. Eagles, Queen, Alicia Keys. Nice. The Allman Brothers. Love this. Ooh, 30 Seconds to Mars. I've never heard of them, but would love to now. Oh, Mark Anthony. Love him. Government Mule. Got some jam band in the house. All right, love it. So feel free to continue doing that. We'll move to the next slide. Too many to name. Awesome. Wonderful. Is there anything in particular we're going to Mentimeter again? Is there anything in particular that you were hoping we covered today? Right? This is a Mentimeter? Can I get an affirmation here from my producer? Yes. Great. Anything in particular that you're hoping we will cover today? Keep in mind the agenda that we discussed earlier. IWRS, that is always number one. And as you saw, we will be covering that. So this is a word cloud. It's really fun. If you put words in, then we get to watch it dance. Reports, updates, process requirements. Yep, we got some agreement there. All right. Well, I think we are going to include some of those for sure. Managing data, how to enter. All right. Helpful to know what you are looking for. And I know that actually, Chia, you've been looking at this closely in terms of IWRS. We are doing some of that. And what I'll say is that if particular questions aren't answered, if you have particular questions about that, your grant manager is certainly always available to help. So that's what I would say about it. Gia, do you want to say anything else about what's covered and not in this session?
Yeah, we will certainly introduce when IWRS entry is necessary during this session. However, for a detailed walkthrough regarding RWRS, we have 4 sessions upcoming starting next week. So if you have not done so, please go to workNet, which we will introduce, we will put that in the chat a little bit later, but please go to workNet and register for those IWRS sessions. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you so much, Gia. Great. All right. Well, thank you so much. Next slide, please. So if you, great. If you have any comments, feedback, or questions, you can mail us email us, and that email is now in the chat. So you can just capture that if you have anything else you need, or as always, reach out to your grant manager. Next slide, please. Great. Any last questions before I hand it off to Gia to talk about professional development and technical assistance?
Yep, there are no questions in the chat.
All right, wonderful. Gia, take it away.
And awesome. Thank you, Anna. So we are going to look at Section 9, Professional Development and Technical Assistance. By the end of this session, you should be able to identify the professional development opportunities provided by the Office of Illinois Works, reference the expectations for each of the grantee program coaching tracks, save the date for upcoming professional development sessions and events, and ensure professional development offerings are responsive to both linguistic and cultural needs of your participants. So of course, when we talk about Section 9, Professional Development and Technical Assistance, we are referring to the 2024 Grantee Manual. And I want to start with defining both professional development and technical assistance. And I want to do this for two reasons. The first one is a lot of you who have had engagement with the DCEO in the past, you are likely familiar with the term technical assistance. I want to note that DCEO's definition for technical assistance differs a little bit from Illinois Works. And so I'm going to share the Illinois Works definition. And just for you to know that when we talk about technical assistance, we are talking about the Illinois Works specific definition. I think one of the other questions we get often is, well, what's the difference between professional development and technical assistance? So just to differentiate between those, professional development is the culmination, it's all of the tools, techniques, strategies, trainings, and group sessions like this one that impact the learners or the grantees' knowledge, skills, behaviors, and attitudes. All of this is done with the goal of improving performance and supporting your success with the implementation of your Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program. So in contrast to that, technical assistance is really more of a one-on-one small group intervention that helps ensure program fidelity and compliance with the goal of supporting your overall success. So both have the intention to support your success with the Illinois Works program. So let's take a deep dive into professional development. Illinois Works offers, we have a very robust catalog of professional development offerings. Within that, it includes webinar sessions, which is what we're doing right now. This is one of our onboarding webinar sessions. We have program coaching, which we're actually going to take a deep dive into. We have Toolbox Tuesdays. Those are scheduled to start in April, and they're typically the first Tuesday of the month. We have a regional meeting that we are planning for spring, and the planning for that is actually in progress. We have the space for that, so we'll be back at for those of you on the call who joined us for the in-person orientation. We're going to be back there at that NIU site for this regional meeting in spring. Technical assistance, and let's see. I'm gonna taking a look at the screen here. How many of you can do like maybe a raised hand. How many of you are familiar with communities of practice? Have either heard of it or have previously participated in? Okay, a couple. All right, awesome. So this idea of a community of practice looks like it may be new for many of you. So we'll also spend some time talking about communities of practice and the value that can add for your team. And in the fall, we also sponsor an annual conference, and conversations around the location and date for that are actually ongoing right now as we speak. So to learn more about these offerings, and of course, very specifically the onboarding session, especially since IWRS comes up as one of the areas of focus that you all are most interested in, those four IWRS onboarding sessions are available now for you to register for. But if you want more information around what those sessions are, what is, what is being taught in those sessions, you can actually see table 19, 20, and 21 in your grantee manual starting on page 162, and that'll give you more information about the onboarding sessions. The Illinois Works Partner Guide provides information around registration, and that link is being provided for you in the chat. Thank you, Monica. All right, so you can click there and grab that. Let's talk about professional development. So grantees are required to ensure appropriate staff participate in each of the professional development opportunities, as well as ensure you have an appropriate budget line item to support participation. So for example, particularly for those who are coming to the conference from either Central Illinois and downstate, if the conference is held in the Chicagoland area, or vice versa, if we do it kind of in Bloomington and you're coming from the Chicagoland area, it may require you to stay overnight. And if you are staying overnight, you want to make sure that there's a line item in your budget to accommodate the conference. So not only is it a requirement, but Illinois Works allows reimbursement for our programming. And so just make sure you have that line item in your budget for all of your appropriate staff to attend. We'll talk more about that in a second. The next one is webinar sessions. So we're in a webinar session right now. Webinars are professional development opportunities conducted over the internet. The Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program webinar sessions may include, but may not be limited to, training, information sessions, or conference sessions. Webinar sessions will be recorded and made available through the Illinois Works Partner Guide. So in the same space where you register for a webinar session, once the session has been completed and the recording is available, you will see that registration link disappear and a copy of the recording and the PowerPoint slides available in its place. So that makes it easy to access the webinar sessions. After onboarding, or even as a part of onboarding, webinars are typically designed to accomplish a couple different things. So the first one is, of course, how to navigate and enter data in IWRS, how to utilize the grantee manual. Again, we are now in session 3 of 3 for the 2024 grantee manual. And even after onboarding, these sessions are not loaded in workNet yet, but they will be loaded shortly. They are coming. There will be professional development around program requirements, such as how to obtain certification for your instructors, providing effective transition services, which is key to the success of your program, or how to utilize data to create a program improvement plan. So those sessions are still forthcoming throughout the calendar year for your grant. Webinars are a requirement. There's no exception to that for all grantees, irrespective of their coaching track assignment. And we'll talk more about coaching track assignments in a second. You can view the current webinar session again at the Illinois Works Partner Guide and Illinois WorkNet, and Monica provided that chat in the link for you, that link in the chat for you. Let's talk about communities of practice. So for those who are not familiar, communities of practice are a group of individuals who share common interests, profession, or passion, and come together to learn from one another, collaborate, and develop their knowledge and expertise. This is a platform that has been developed for you to be able to collaborate, not just with an Illinois Works, there's a lead, like a leader for each of the communities of practice. So not just to collaborate with the Illinois Works leader for that community of practice, but to be able to partner with one another. Right now we have 3 communities of practice. The first one is the Transition Service Coordinator. So if you have that title, then you'll be invited to participate in that particular community of practice. It meets once a month. We also have new for this year, a wraparound service community of practice for those coordinators. Again, they will meet once a month. And then we have a training and instructor community of practice. They meet quarterly. But here's a nice thing about the community of practice, irrespective of how frequently they meet, you all will be able to ask questions and exchange information with one another. So for example, one of the instructors could potentially post, we're getting ready to implement our first work-based learning experience. This is what we're doing. What do you all think about this? What other things are you all doing for work-based learning? And then you all will be able to share and exchange that information amongst one another, even outside of the regular meetings within this particular format. Let me pause for a second. Any questions about onboarding so far, the webinars, or the community of practice? You can either put it in the chat or feel free to unmute.
So far, no questions, Gia.
Awesome. Thanks, Fairly. All right, so let's talk about program coaching. Program coaching is a tailored engagement between a professional program coach and a grantee. This opportunity allows grantees to receive individually tailored support with the goal of mitigating or preventing program challenges and proactively supporting your success. We offer program coaching within 3 domains. There is the instructional domain. This is really all about your curriculum, instruction, instructors, certifications, anything related to that. We provide coaching regarding that. We have the pre-apprenticeship life cycle, which is all of the steps from outreach and recruitment, intake, all the way to post-graduation follow-up. Okay. And then we provide business development coaching. So anything that might help you build the capacity of your organization so that you can best serve the individuals who are matriculating through your program. So 3 domains. If you want to know more about the 3 coaching domains that are offered through the coaching program, you can see table 22 on page 167. It is actually called coaching domains. Within those 3 coaching domains, Illinois Works has the ability to identify and support over 30 coaching needs. So how do we identify what potentially might be a coaching need? So I'm going to take a second here and talk about the coaching tracks, which I mentioned just a second ago, and how we determine those track designations and how we identify those coaching needs. So again, program coaching is a requirement for the Office of Illinois Works for grantees or organizations that have been designated as a track 2 or a track 3. If your organization is designated as a track 1, you are not required to participate in coaching. However, you can opt in to coaching. So there are organizations who have been designated as a track 1. So they're not required to do coaching, but they have reached out and said, based on these 3 things, we know that additional support would be helpful. Can you still coach, provide us with coaching on these very specific programmatic development areas? And so that is available for those who are track 1. So again, program coaching is tailored to provide proactive and preventive support driven by a needs analysis and coaching plan. Approximately 75% of coaching support is proactive. So the goal is to prevent the need for a corrective action. 25% is reactive because there are occasions where your organization may be challenged with a particular component of the life cycle. And so that might require a corrective action plan. And if that is required for you, you can actually request coaching to help provide you with support on, let's say, creating your corrective action plan. So although 75% is proactive, 25% can be reactive in that respect. So the Illinois Works coaching program partners with individual grantees to help ensure program success and alignment with the Illinois Work Grant expectations. Illinois Works grantees are contractually required to comply with coaching expectations based on your specific track. So I have said the word track a ton of times. Let's talk about the tracks and the track designations. So you will be assessed for program readiness with respect to the Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program. Grantee track designations will be the result of a comprehensive needs analysis process and considers the available information resulting from the NOFO, and you all are new grantees, so that information will be used, and the contracting process. For renewal grantees, we look at something a little bit different. So because they've had previous performance outcomes, we do look at how they performed last year to help determine their track designation and their coaching plan for this year. So the coaching needs analysis produces what we call flags. Flags are signals that indicate that a potential performance outcome could benefit from additional support. So again, this is preventive. Comprehensively, these are all the documents you can expect that we've looked at when we determine the track and your coaching plan. So we have the internal controls questionnaire, the ICQ, the DCEO programmatic risk assessment. For new grantees, we look at the NOFO reviewers application evaluation scores and notes. Next, on Thursday, we are going to talk about the coaching needs assessment questionnaire. So if you have not registered for that, please do so. But that provides you with support to complete that particular questionnaire. That's used as a part of our assessment process. We get direction from the deputy director who has had conversations with you, likely during your negotiation process. We look at monthly compliance reports. Those are for the grantees who were funded in 2023. And we also look at their year-end overall outcome for those who received funding in 2023. So this is a very comprehensive, in-depth assessment of each of the grantees to make a determination about the track and what very specific areas additional support would add value. In addition, Illinois Works considers program development, longevity, capacity, experience. So what have you done in the past that indicates your ability to be successful during the 2024 grant year? Once the information from all of these data sources have been analyzed, the track designation for grantees are established. You could be either track 1, track 2, or track 3. I will note though, for those who are track 3, they have likely already been notified during their contract negotiation process. If you want to know more about the track designations, take a look at Table 23 in your 2024 Grantee Manual. It will further give an explanation around the tracks. So, professional development and coaching plans. At the end of the needs analysis, if you are track 1, you will receive recommendations for your professional development plan, which I'll talk more about in a second. If you are track 2 or track 3, you will not receive a professional development plan. You will receive a coaching plan accompanied with your track designation. So track 1, professional development plan, track 2 and track 3, a coaching plan. And of course, you will also be required to participate in coaching. If you take a look at Table 23, again, in your grantee manual, that provides information around the track designations, other resources available in your grantee manual. If you would like to see a sample of the internal development plan, that is template number 20 in the appendix of your grantee manual. But I'm going to come back to that in just a second. So track designations at a very high level. Though there may be exceptions, track 1 grantees are typically experienced at delivering construction and/or building trade pre-apprenticeship programs with a robust staffing infrastructure, including strong formal partners or contractors or other relationships to help support the success of your program graduates. Though there may be exceptions, track 2 grantees are typically new to delivering construction or building trades pre-apprenticeship programs or do not have a strong, robust staffing infrastructure to implement the Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program. So for those grantees, 10 hours, up to 10 hours of coaching support is available to you per month. And of course, coaching is required. And unlike the other two, track 3 organizations are a part of what is new to Illinois Works, but it is our accelerator programs. Grantees are generally, but not always, identified during the NOFO process. These grantees are contractually required to participate in the program coaching, and they get anywhere from 10 to 20 hours of coaching support per month. In addition to that, there's some other professional development scaffolding that we make available. For those who are in track 3, if more than 20 hours of coaching per month is needed for program success, we can request permission to exceed that number from Dr. Ruano. So if more support is needed, permission can be granted to provide that additional support. Before I move on from coaching, any questions about the 3 tracks, coaching requirements, coaching plan, professional development plan? Any questions?
So far, no questions in chat, Gia.
All right, awesome. All right, let's keep going. So I mentioned that in the fall, we will have our Illinois Works annual conference. And of course, I know many of you understand this, but a conference is an event that provides an opportunity for industry subject matter experts and program practitioners, which for us are the Illinois Works grantees, to share and exchange ideas, information, experiences, new technologies, and theories, among others, with program attendees and with each other. Not only do we leverage subject matter experts for this conference, we typically have some state dignitaries that attend the conference, but we also take a look at where grantees are performing exceptional. And so we do invite grantees to actually share some of their processes and procedures so that they can provide others with information around how they experience that level of success. So for example, if we have an organization whose compliance is over 100% and their outreach and recruitment is exceptional, and we might ask them to come and share a little bit around their process for outreach and recruitment. Of course, the conference is face-to-face. And we always look forward to that. It's a fun time. I'll just leave it there and not add anything else because this is being recorded. But we typically have a lot of fun at the conference. Let's talk about technical assistance. Technical assistance is the process of providing targeted assistance to grantees. And again, we are just positioning coaching from technical assistance. And while coaching is required and is proactive and preventive, technical assistance will provide targeted assistance with the goal of program improvement, but technical assistance is typically a more reactive approach. It's one-on-one. You will not have a regular technical assistance schedule on your calendar. So if for some reason you are not meeting milestones, then you will likely hear from your grant manager, and they will provide a one-on-one intervention, corrective action, and compliance support to help get you back on track. If you don't need it, you won't get that call, but if you need it, they will make that available to you, and they will alert you that there may be some performance concerns and help you make some adjustments to get back on track to be successful in the program. By show of hands, how many of you have spoken to, met, heard from your grant manager to date? You can raise your hand. Yes. This is awesome. What I will tell you is, thank you for those who responded. What I will tell you is, even though technical assistance can be corrective, welcome that call or welcome that communication from your grant manager, because their ability to alert you that there may be a concern and help you change course it is a valuable communication to make sure that, one, you are meeting outcomes, thus you will get your reimbursement, and then you will have success at the end of your program. So don't see that as a negative, see that as feedback and welcome that communication from them. So Exhibit 12, in your grantee manual, program coaching versus technical assistance, we actually do a little compare and contrast between the two so that you know how they are different and who to communicate with if you need that support. So for example, program coaching is prevention and mitigation, while technical assistance aids in course correction. Program coaching is scheduled regularly. Technical assistance only if it's necessary. Program coaching is primarily proactive. Technical assistance is primarily reactive. Program coaching is delivered by independent consultants, while technical assistance is delivered by an Illinois Works grantee manager employed by the state of Illinois. Again, Exhibit 12 gives you this differentiation between program coaching and technical assistance. Okay. A few more things to cover. So I mentioned that Track 1 grantees can receive or will receive an internal professional development plan. They'll receive recommendations for that plan. So let me explain this. Illinois Works understands its program requirements. So we know what we expect as from a program outcome perspective. However, we also understand that you know your institution and your staff. So as a result of that, you should be able to leverage your institutional knowledge to develop professional development necessary for your staff to be successful. We don't monitor that. It is an expectation that you are augmenting the training we're providing to speak to the very specific needs of your team, but we will provide you with recommendations based on our assessment. If you would like to see a sample of a professional development plan, there is one available for you in the appendix of your grantee manual. So template 20 is a sample of an internal professional development plan so that you can have a sense of the expectations around your plan. At a minimum, your plan should include title, role expectations, the professional development that needs to be offered, the event that you think that particular role will be able to get that professional development, and who are the approved staff to participate or attend that professional development. So I want to do a really quick Mentimeter question. So using Mentimeter, please answer the following question. What types of professional development opportunities have you planned or are you planning for your staff? So as you think about the expectations of Illinois Works, who you currently have on your team, Illinois Works certainly provides robust catalog of professional development. But in addition to that, considering the specific needs of your team, what additional professional development are you thinking about or are you planning? And the link to Mentimeter is in the chat. You can either click on that link or you can put in www.menti.com and just add the code and share what you've either been thinking about or your team has been asking for. We have roundtable discussions. That's awesome. So for whoever added roundtable discussions, is this where you have all of the coordinators or the instructors share progress of participants, or is it more just increasing the knowledge of your team? You can either unmute or just put it in chat, or not respond. Like, I don't want to put you on a spot if you don't want to. What other things are we thinking about? Because there's a couple really great ways to leverage roundtables. Okay. All right. So while you are possibly typing in, so we've got here dialogue with new hires and those who have been here for a while. Wonderful. So talking to the individuals who have done similar work before, partnering with staff, more hands-on approach. Yes, that's back to the hands-on learning by doing. Yes, we have NAWP. Please feel free to continue to share. I'm going to share some really quick ideas here. You can consider doing continuing education. These can be academic courses or workshops, team networking. Yes, for sure. You can work with a professional development organization. Like, are you all a member of an association? We have skill building, so we know that the instructors have to be certified for a lot of this instruction. So working with those organizations that credential your instructors. Mentorship, sponsorship. You all had a chance to meet the renewal grantees at our initial onboarding session. So, I saw a lot of information being exchanged during that session, which is exactly what should have happened. So maybe reaching out and contacting someone who has already done this and demonstrated success in the program. And if they're returning, they've demonstrated success in the program. Again, coaching, feedback, working with the coaches, technical assistance. This is great skill building. Thank you. Yes. Last thing I want to talk about before I turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Brian Richards, I want to talk about linguistic competency and in professional development. So linguistic and really cultural competence and professional development. So successful implementation of the Illinois Works Peer Apprenticeship Program integrates diversity, inclusion, belonging, equity, or abbreviated DIBE, with the goal of fostering an environment that allows individuals to feel safe, participate fully, develop professionally, and reach their fullest potential. Embedded in DIBE are linguistic and cultural skills, which should be included in your internal professional development plan for your team. So linguistic and cultural skills are not just about, do we have materials in another language, or do we have a bilingual outreach and recruitment staff? It is the ability to understand the nuances of language and the cultural implications of potential participants throughout the life cycle of the pre-apprenticeship program. And really at a high level, we have 3 steps that we always want to be front of mind for you. Always refrain from judgment, clarify understanding, and as an underlying principle, always seek first to understand. More information around cultural and linguistic competency, you can see page 177 in the 2024 Grantee Manual. Okay, before I turn this over to my colleague, we covered a lot about professional development and technical assistance. Any questions? You can either unmute or put it in the chat.
So far, no questions in chat, Gia.
All right. So I am now going to turn this over to my colleague, Dr. Brian Richards, Associate Director at NIU, the Center for Governmental Studies. Brian, they're all yours.
Thank you, Gia. So in this next section, turning our attention to data collection and data analysis, I think it's really important to, there's a lot of really nitty-gritty details around this topic. And so your grantee manual is going to be your best friend in this area. I'm going to go over a lot today without you using the Illinois Works reporting system. A lot of it might not make sense to you. So make sure that you have that grantee manual available to you as you're getting into the data process. In this section, we're going to talk about the steps of the data management process, about collecting the relevant data for each stage of the pre-apprenticeship life cycle. We're going to highlight the data management process, the types of data that you will be collecting and reporting on, the role of that reporting system, and talk about how important it is that your efforts are really accurate in the collection and entry of your data and record keeping. So why is data important for this program? The Illinois Works program strategically uses data in multiple ways. And so let's just talk about what data are to start with. These are individual pieces of facts that when we put them all together and analyze them, it really provides both you as the manager of your local program, as well as the statewide program, a lot of valuable information about how well things are going, ways we can improve the program, looking at whether we're meeting our outcomes, and eventually will lead to some longitudinal studies where we look at what happens to the program participants after they complete our program and move into the labor force. I think another important piece of this data collection, management, and reporting is that it's a way to demonstrate the value of the Illinois Works program overall. Illinois Works is a state-funded program, and if the legislators and those in the governor's office don't understand how well it's working, they may reconsider the funding. So it's really important to demonstrate the value of this program overall. So we're going to start with a little Mentimeter question about data. So in your current program, how are you either using data or planning to use data? In participants, yes. I really like the improvements comment. That means not only are you just entering the data, but you're looking at the data that you've entered and using it to understand what's happening with your program. Yep, again, outcomes, making sure we're on track, meeting our grant goals. Both at the individual participant, we'll talk about how this works, thinking about the individual participants, but also at your program level. Yep. All good stuff here. Thanks for your input here. So let's talk about the data management process, how we're gathering and using all of this data. The Illinois Works data management process is really a four-step process. It starts with data collection, getting the data. The next step is entering data, so getting the data that we collect into the Illinois Works reporting system. Doing some, quality control checks on that data. If you used data long enough, you know that it's easy to either make reporting or calculation errors when you're dealing with large amounts of data. So it's really important that we do some quality control checks on the data that we've already entered. And then finally using that data for accurate reporting. So that accurate reporting is really the culmination of this process. And this is where we're sharing information about our program, both to our colleagues so we can share our progress as our participants move through the program, but also externally. And so for both of these purposes, it's really important that we have quality, accurately entered data so that we can track our programs and report on them accurately. So let's talk about the most important role in this data management process. To the next slide. So we're establishing a systematic process for accurately collecting the data and entering into the Illinois Works system. The data entry coordinator is really the one that's accountable and responsible for this data entry into the system. The coordinator, the data entry coordinator, can have additional staff at the program level that helps with entering data into the system. You need to make sure they have the right skill set, that they're comfortable with working with computers, of course, with the various methods of entering data into the system. So your program may have several persons that are responsible for entering data into the system, but it's really this data entry coordinator that is accountable for getting the data entered into the system and making sure that the data within the system is accurate after it's entered and as it's being analyzed. So have each of you identified a data entry coordinator for your program? It's another Mentimeter question. Looks like we're on track. People are still, one person's still working on that, but sure you're. Again, your grantee manual has a section starting on page 58 that really describes this role of the data entry coordinator. Great. So let's talk about the different categories of data that we collect for the Illinois Works program. So grantee actions, data about grantee actions includes data about your engagement in the development, design, and implementation of your pre-apprenticeship program. This might include things like the number of cohorts that you're going to have, the number of enrollees in each cohort, the number of participants in those cohorts that complete the program. These are overall program level data that describes what's going on with your program. The next is critical to the data life cycle for Illinois Works is the data about your participants. And here you're monitoring the participation, progress, and completion of your individual participants, making sure that they're taking all of the steps necessary to making sure that they're completing and expanding opportunities for themselves as they go through and complete the program. You know, we all know that the goal of this program is for our participants to get good jobs and start into a good career, and the tracking of their participant progress, making sure that we have a good start towards that process. And finally is the financial data that needs to be tracked as part of your operation. And so your financial data is your actual expenditures as you're administering your program. And then it's going to be, those expenditures are going to be compared to your allocated budget, making sure that your spending is occurring in the categories that are expected, making sure that your expenditures are allowable under your grant agreement, and you know, if possible, leverage resources are being used to support your grant activities. Now, the financial data is different from the others in that the financial data is not collected through the Illinois Works reporting system, where we're tracking participants and grantee level data. The financial data is supplemented through your periodic financial report, which will be discussed later this morning. So your participant level data is really you're really tracking your participants through this pre-apprenticeship life cycle. If you've been to the previous sessions, you're familiar with this pre-apprenticeship life cycle by now. There's a table, again, in your grantee manual, table 25 on pages 181, 182 of the grant manual that really details about the data that is collected through each step of this pre-apprenticeship life cycle. And so that really guides your data collection for your participants. So once we've collected our data, then it needs to get into the Illinois Works reporting system. That's the process of data entry, where you're really going to demonstrate the progress to the Illinois Works program about the progress of your participants. the Illinois Works reporting system is really a real-time tracking system, so that you are tracking your participants as they go through their training programs, as they receive supportive services, any of the services, the academic services that they receive. This all is part of the data collection and data entry process, so that the participants are tracked in real time as they go through the program. And so once the data gets entered into the system, it's really important that we do some quality control of that data. Like I said, you're going to be entering a lot of information into the reporting system. It's human nature to occasionally make an error in data entry. We all do it. So that's why we have these quality control systems and why they are so important. We need to identify errors if they've been made and make sure we correct them. And so for Illinois Works, this quality control process asks you to regularly review your data collection and enter and your data that's been entered into the system for accuracy. This is really important so that we maintain the integrity of the reporting for the program. And again, in your grantee manual, table 26 really walks you through that process of the quality control process. Other resources that are in your grantee manual. Your grantee manual includes it's Exhibit 16. It's a data verification checklist. And that checklist has a series of tasks that the data entry coordinator will either oversee or perform themselves, and explains what data are we collecting through hard copies, things like assessments, program applications where you're perhaps having participants fill out forms and things, and then shows the information on those hard copies that needs to be entered into the Illinois Works reporting system. So this is a checklist of all the items that must be entered or uploaded. There's ways of uploading scanned copies of your hard copy documents into the system as your participants go through each stage of their pre-apprenticeship life cycle. In addition to that data verification checklist, there is also a template. It's template 23, a data quality management plan. And this plan is, you're required to complete this plan annually and identify staff who are responsible for data entry and verification, and requires each grantee to outline a timeline for when the data will be entered and verified. These just help you think through the process of data collection and data entry, and making sure that you're capturing all of the information that is required as your participants go through that pre-apprenticeship life cycle. And then finally, once we have our data all collected and entered into the system, that's when we can use the data for reporting. Some of the reporting is real time. You can see real time reporting about your participants in the Illinois Works system. Our partners at Southern Illinois University, you hear a lot about university rivalries, but us at Northern Illinois University work very well with our partners at Southern Illinois University on this and a variety of programs. And so, they're really responsible for developing that Illinois Works reporting system. And we work very closely with them because we use a lot of the data that they collect to do our research and evaluation and other outcome tracking processes. So they can help you set up the system, answer questions about the system, and they provide a series of technical assistance as needed for grantees that are working with the system. And there's different levels of access to the system. You can have staff that have just access to reporting so they can see the tracking. And of course, some of you, the data quality manager and data entry coordinator, are going to have access to be able to enter data. So it's really a best practice to have a single dedicated person, that is assigned to verify the accuracy. So that data quality role. And it's a best practice for that person to be someone different than the person or persons entering the data. It's very easy to miss errors that you make yourself. So this is why we think it's a best practice to have somebody independently verifying the data quality and filling that data quality role. And so, we really encourage you to have a data quality manager who's different from your data entry personnel. All right, and then finally, as part of this data discussion, first part of this data management discussion, there's a closeout process that each grantee will go through. And this is a process that you go through step by step with your Illinois Works grant manager. And this process verifies the accuracy and completeness of all of the participant data in the Illinois Works reporting system. They're looking to verify whether the appropriate documents have been uploaded into the system, whether numbers and progress have been entered accurately. And this process typically begins in the fall of each grant year and continues into the following grant year. And the culmination of this process is that the final closeout funds are released based on the results of this process and your final numbers on your grant progress. There's also a monthly compliance process that also works to verify accurate data entry. So, that final grant closeout process is really a final check. That there is monitoring throughout the year, and you'll work closely with your grant managers on that process. But that final closeout process really makes sure that all the pieces are there that are necessary to make sure that you receive the funds that you were due, that your program has earned through its performance throughout the year. All right, and before we move on to the next section, are there any questions?
Hi, Brian. We do have comments in the chat. The first is from Tina. Will you share specifics each category, like what and actions or examples will be tracked? Just to let you know, I did respond to Tina in the chat and just some examples for grantee actions and financials. So Brian, I don't know if you want to add to that or not, but I did respond to that in the chat.
Yeah, I think, for example, as your participants are going through their training program, they go through a series of modules in their, the construction pre-apprenticeship program, and you're tracking their participation in and completion of those modules one by one as they go through them. So again, this is a real-time tracking system, so really just tracking. Also important to track supportive services that the participants might need and receive as they go through the program if they need help, for example, with childcare or transportation. So those are some of the other participant level actions that might be tracked.
Thanks, Brian. We do have a chat. It says, will the system
So Gia, you're breaking up a little, but I see that there's a question about generating reports. So the system does generate reports. It also has some dashboards that have sort of green, yellow, red coding on them, so you can see kind of red flag areas, for example, like if it looks like some of your participants are falling behind on completion of training modules or something like that. This is something you can look into. And your first question is, does that reflect reality? Are my participants really falling behind, or is it a data entry question and I just need to get my data updated? So the system does have some real-time reporting. And as Gia said, there is an Illinois Works reporting system onboarding session also where they'll cover much more detail about the capabilities of reporting.
Thanks, Brian. And those are all of the questions in the chat.
Okay, I do see a hand raised, perhaps. I don't know if Peggy, do you have a question?
No, I'm fine. Thank you, Dr. Chair.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Norman Ruano to talk about records and reports.
Hey, thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. Thanks again for joining us today. Today is a good day. We're celebrating the fact that this is the last session of the Grantee manual. As you can see, this is a comprehensive document that provides the guidance, policies, procedures, and practices related to Illinois Works. Here's a recommendation. When I used to run programming, obviously we used all kinds of funding available, and a lot of them had manuals that that needed to be used, and we would always print a copy for all the staff in the that were participating in the program to be used as reference as we did activities, because otherwise it's very easy to miss some important guidance that you may have to be following related to a program. So that's just a recommendation. Obviously trying to be ecological and responsible with the environment, maybe not one for each of the staff members, but maybe one in general that is used by all staff. So that's just a recommendation. Moving on to our section 11 of the Grantee Manual. As you may remember, the Grantee Manual has a total of 14 sections. Section 11 deals with finances, records, and reports. Once we have completed reviewing this section, you'll be able to differentiate between reporting and record keeping. You'll be able to also see tips and recommendations related to how you should organize your files and maintain them. Also, we'll be able to go over some tools, including the file checklist to collect and maintain required documents. As important, you'll be able to comply with GATA, which is the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act requirements. You'll be able to accurately and timely submit required standardized GATA reports tied to your agreement. You will also be able to utilize the periodic financial report Brian mentioned a minute ago and submit it, and we'll discuss the particular way that we recommend that you submit those reports. You'll be able to explain the Illinois Works performance-based payment model, which was designed and is applied to grant reimbursement. This is a section that typically produces a lot of questions from participants, and I'm more than happy to answer those questions. You'll be able to also understand how to submit a performance-based payment appeal form. And lastly, you'll be able to determine the appropriate use of funds, how to request an advance or a budget modification, and how to establish a procurement policy. So those are the objectives that we're going to cover in this section. As I said, This will be section 11 of the grantee manual. If you have the grantee manual with you, want to follow along, you can certainly do that. This section will set expectations for record keeping and management, explore how to submit programmatic financial reports, and teach the appropriate use of Illinois Works funds specifically related to expenditures, budget modifications, and procurement. Keep in mind that the funding that we use, as Brian mentioned earlier, state funded, that was passed by the Illinois General Assembly through the Illinois Works Jobs Program Act. As a result, it requires the appropriate use of this funding. So Illinois Works grantees must comply with all state of Illinois reporting requirements. I hear some noise in the background. I'm wondering if someone needs to be muted. Typically one or more staff persons who are accountable for data entry are also accountable for reporting and record keeping. Record keeping is the process of ensuring the maintenance of pre-apprenticeship records, including all required activities, transactions, and events into IWRS. Reporting is the process of organizing records into topic-specific summaries that are used to monitor the program and determine if goals are achieved. Accurate record keeping is a prerequisite for effective reporting. And I'll just give you an example, a real life example here so that you know how this data is utilized. Okay, so every year we are required to issue 4 reports to the Illinois Works Review Panel, where we have to report on the activities of our grantees, how they're doing in terms of enrollment, completions, transitions. And as I said, it's 4 times a year. Once a year, we have to issue a report to the Illinois General Assembly on Illinois Works, what we did, how we did it, because again, we're receiving $25 million worth of funding from the General Assembly, and obviously we need to justify our activities. As importantly, every year we need to publish an individualized report for each of our grantees on our website, made available to the public, any stakeholder out there, be it elected officials or any other community stakeholder interested in knowing how each of our grantees is doing. And we're required to produce those reports and publish them by April for the previous year. So as a result, you can see here why it's so important to ensure we have good records and reporting to ensure not only that we fulfill those requirements, but more importantly, as Brian was talking about earlier, we use all of that data to see how we're having an impact in the communities and individuals, if the investment that we're making in these programs is actually paying off, and what those results are. Effective record keeping and reporting impacts documentation of completed work, program planning, program operations, program evaluation, ongoing monitoring and self-assessment, continuous improvement, communication, knowledge transfer, institutional memory, legal issues, risk management, and leadership continuity. So it's very important that we really, really do a good job with record keeping and reporting so that not only do we fulfill all of our statutory requirements, but more importantly, we really see if our program is having the impact it was designed to have. Let's discuss a little bit now about participant records and files. A record is a collection of related data items and or information. A file is a collection of records with one or more common properties. For instance, a participant file. Participants' files should be organized and structured to facilitate compliance with the general requirements of the Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program. Grantees are required to keep all participant records and files for at least 3 years following pre-apprentice completion or dismissal from the program. So here's a recommendation for you. You should have a file for each of your students, for each of your participants, and then have files specifically for a cohort, right? There are some documents that will go into that participant file, and there are some documents that are just cohort related. The bottom line is that if you are chosen for a field monitoring visit, and we are very quickly moving to do at least one annual field monitoring visit for each of our grantees, we will send you a letter and say you need to make these records available to us, and this is the date when we're showing up. Typically it's a full day exercise, and we need to ensure all the required documents are there. And obviously, if you have the documents there, you are obviously should have a process for ensuring that information, that data is entered in IWRS accurately and in a timely manner. Even though Illinois Works maintains a significant amount of data for participants, hard copy records such as program applications, age verification, high school diploma, GED or high school certificate, interview questionnaires, and career assessments on others should be maintained by the grantee in the participant file. As you may remember, and we will provide more guidance through our IWRS sessions, some of these documents do have to be uploaded into IWRS, and there are particular prerequisites of when they are uploaded. Exhibit 7, Participant File Checklist, provides a list of all required records to include in the participant file. It is available in the appendix of the 2024 Grantee Manual. So I really encourage you to go ahead and use that participant file checklist. Probably a good idea will be print one of those, put it inside the file, staple it, and then just make sure that all the items on the checklist are included in that participant file. Illinois Works reports. This section that we're going to discuss now outlines the standardized reporting requirements above and beyond Illinois Works. And these requirements are a result of GATA, the Grants Accountability Act, which is the statute that regulates how grants are issued and managed for the state of Illinois. So there are two requirements here we need to discuss. Any of you that has been involved with state grants in the past have heard about these, but I want to make sure that anybody else that may be new also hears about these. So the first requirement is the Periodic Performance Report, or PPR, which is a standard uniform statewide performance progress reporting format used by all state agencies to collect performance information from recipients of state grant awards. Again, it's called the Periodic Performance Report. Now, this report, you will find a schedule, a reporting schedule on your grant agreement, and it's typically submitted on a quarterly basis, 30 days, within 30 days of the end of each quarter as outlined in the grant agreement. So, the quarter that ends, March, the end of March, you have 30 days, up to 30 days to submit that report, and on we go. Now, here's an important point here, though. Grantee performance data is tracked in IWRS. We just discussed IWRS is the Illinois Works reporting system. As a result, additional supporting documentation is not required for your PPR submission. So meaning, when you submit your PPR, it will ask you for additional data supporting the report you're submitting. But because you already submit that data through IWRS, you do not need to attach anything else to your PPR. You just need to mention on your PPR that, in fact, you are using IWRS real time to report your data. So that will do it, okay? Second required report, GATA required report, is called the Periodic Financial Report. This is a standard uniform statewide financial reporting format used by all state agencies to collect financial information from recipients of grant awards. Unless statutorily exempt as documented in the catalog of state financial assistance in the Uniform Grant Agreement, all grant awards are subject to periodic financial reporting. I can tell you all Illinois Works grantees are subject to periodic financial reporting. So you will need to submit the periodic financial report. Now, here's where it's a little different for Illinois Works. The PFR will submit expenses on a monthly basis for reimbursement. The PFR and expenses are due no later than 30 days after the end of the month. Your grant agreement may say, based on the risk factors on your organization, that you have to submit your PFR on a quarterly basis. Okay, that is correct. You cannot submit her less than on a quarterly basis. However, our process is that if you want to submit them every 30 days you can. So you can submit them on a monthly basis for Illinois Works. And the reason for that is because of cash flow. Okay, so for us, it's very important that our grantees have the necessary funding that they need to run their programs. As a result, we will accept actually the Office of Grant Management, which is the team at DCO that receives these reports, will accept your PFR on a monthly basis, even though your agreement may say every quarter. Okay. Uh, all of this information was also provided to your program administrators in the 2024 program administrators orientation we conducted. There is a recording of this session available in the Illinois WorkNet partner guide. If you're interested in listening to that recording, you can certainly do that. We also cover this information there. But if you want more detailed guidance, we also have more detailed guidance related to this on pages 193 to pages 195 of the grantee manual. More information about these report and other grantee resources can be found on the GATA resource website. You can access the GATA resource website using the link that is being provided for you now in the chat. So one of my colleagues will provide the link in the chat for you. You can certainly go ahead and use it. It's already in the chat. For specific questions, you can also reach out to your Office of Grants Management, Grant Manager. Let me just take a minute here to explain. There are two grant managers that you will be working with as you are engaged with the Office of Illinois Works. The one that deals with all your programmatic compliance, reporting, technical assistance, training requirements is the Illinois Works Grant Manager. You have met them all in the past, but I'll just mention them. Steve, Monica, or Dan are the three grant managers. One of them has been assigned to you. They've been reaching out to your organization to schedule meetings to discuss all the rest of the onboarding. So that's the Illinois Works Grant Manager. However, you will also get what's called an OGM, Office of Grant Manager, Grant Manager. That grant manager is the one that processes all grant modifications. They process anything related to your PFRs, your PPRs. They also process your reimbursements. They are going to have questions about any backup documentation that you submit for expenses. So that's the OGM grant manager. So on a daily basis, you're going to be working with the Illinois Works grant manager, less often with OGM, more related to the use of funds more than anything else.
Norman, I wonder if we can pause to answer a couple of questions in the chat.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Going back to the cohort files, that was right, like you were recommending to keep a cohort file in addition to an individual. What kind of documentation would be considered for a cohort file?
For instance, you may have your work plan. You submit it, it gets approved, you get it back. Your work plan may be there. Your final curriculum plan, you submit it, gets approved, included there. Things that you have submitted to Illinois Works that then we approve, sign off on them, send them back. We'll talk in a minute about you may submit an appeal for completions or transitions. You may want to include those. You will get those back from us. What's important here is any documentation that will show us that you're complying with key elements of Illinois Works. You know, you're required to have a dismissal policy. You're required to have a policy on how you recruit and staff people with the right credentials and experience for your program. Things of that nature that are specific to a cohort, that are specific for that to that program year. You may want to have those in your program file. When we do field monitoring visit, and my team will do a field monitoring visit quickly. You know, you get a letter, and in 2 weeks we're going to show up. But at the same time, the Office of Accountability of DCEO may want to audit you on the ground, and they're going to want to see all of those documents, right? So an easy way of having documents handy that could potentially or likely are going to be asked from either us in the field or the Office of Accountability as they conduct an audit.
And Norman, so another question from an organization that has 3 different locations. They're asking about for those files, can they be stored at one location? Should they be stored each individually at the 3 different locations?
I mean, they can certainly be centralized and stored in one location, but when we go and conduct a field monitoring visit, we're going to go to the location on record, right? So if this is, you know, a different suburb or a different location within Chicago or different economic development region, we are going to go to the location on file on record, and that's where we need to see those files, right?
And do we need physical files as in paper, or can they be, you know, electronically stored copies of what were originally paper
So
documents?
that's a good question. I mean, some of these records will have electronically, but you know, there are some documents, for instance, driver's license, things of that nature. If you have them electronically, we typically request that those files are available for us to be printed, uh, because you know we take copies of those documents when we show up for a field monitoring visit. If you have them electronically, it's possible to have them electronically, but then you need to have a good security policy on how to secure those documents electronically because they have individually identifiable information, right?
Thank you. There was one last question. Is there a table of all of the required reports and the cadence of those reports? I
Um,
don't believe
you know,
so.
this section 11 will talk about the reports. I mean, the only reports you are required to submit are the 2 that I just discussed, which is the PPR and the PFR, and that's based and the cadence of those reports is based on the on your grant agreement. When you receive your grant agreement, it is going to tell you how often those reports need to be submitted. The only thing to remember, as I mentioned, is that generally you will say that PFRs are submitted on a quarterly basis, but we encourage you to submit them on a monthly basis for purposes of cash flow. But you will find all of that information also in the grantee manual and on your grant agreement.
No more questions in the chat. Thanks, Norman.
Okay, great. So moving on to the appropriate use of funds. As with any grant funding, funds must be used for the purpose of implementing the Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program. Specific allowable grant costs were set forth in the applicable NOFO and the Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program rules, along with the 2024 grantee manual. So in the grantee manual, you'll be able to find information starting at page 197 about allowable costs and expenses. Obviously, all of these must comply to CFR 200, which is the federal guidelines related to the use of grant funding. So I would certainly encourage you to go to that section. If you still have any questions about allowable expenses, I would recommend that you contact your Illinois Works grant manager to discuss. They can set up a one-on-one technical assistance session to discuss again allowable expenses. All Illinois Works grantees have an advance available to them during the first year of the grant. So I want to emphasize this. You can request an advance, but it can only be done in the first year of your grant. Capital advances can be up to 10% of the overall grant award, but generally fall around 8% of the overall grant award. To request an advance, grantees must submit a formal letter, an organization letterhead to their assigned grant manager no later than the second Friday of January. So those of you that wanted an advance and requested one, those are in process. If an advance is not requested the first year of your grant agreement, then you're not able to get an advance if you are renewed for a second year or if you're renewed for a third year. Okay, budget modifications. This is a hot potato item here. We get questions about this all the time. Budget modifications must be approved by the Illinois Works grant manager and deputy director for them to be processed. And this is a very important point. We sometimes find out that our grantees are trying to get a budget modification passed through their OGM grant manager. The OGM grant manager does not have the authority to approve a budget modification unless your Illinois Works grant manager and the deputy director, which is myself, have reviewed those modifications and have approved it. Once we do that, then it goes to OGM, and then the OGM grant manager will process it. The other thing to keep in mind is that budget modifications can take between 4 to 6 weeks to fully execute and process. Once the modification goes to OGM, just listen to this very closely, please. Expense reimbursements will not be paid out until the new budget has been approved and enter into the state's grant system. So in other words, you can certainly request a budget modification if you have to. Just keep in mind the process. It needs to go to Illinois Works first. Once we approve it, then it goes to OGM. But even after the right process is followed, it takes 4 to 6 weeks to approve a modification. And while that modification is an approval, you cannot get any of your reimbursements processed. So that's an important one. Program administrators, once again, received information related to these items during the 2024 Program Administrators Orientation, which I mentioned is already recorded and it's part of the partner guide as we speak. If you want more information related to this particular item, you can go to page 198 of the 2024 Grantee Manual. We're going to do a Mentimeter exercise here quickly. We're going to switch topic to talk about the model that we use for our reimbursement, which is a performance-based payment model. But before we do that, I want you to please log on to Mentimeter and answer the question that you see on your screens. Who has previously managed a performance-based grant in the past? We only had 3-4 individuals participating out of 30 plus, so I would encourage you to please log on and respond so that we can see how many of you have experience with performance-based grants. So far, we have 9 responses. A majority of them have not had experience with performance-based grants. Big majority now, 8 to 4. Some more responses. Okay, 8 to 4. So I'll answer any and all questions you may have related to this. It's very important that you really understand how our model works, what we do and how we do it. This transition will be new for many of you who have previously received funding from DCO through its programs and services. You might have received funding before through a traditional model. Illinois Works only uses a performance-based model, so that's what we'll discuss next. For those who are familiar with this type of payment model, it has a reputation of representing certain challenges. Given this, it's understandable that you may have questions regarding the impact of this transition. You will find that there are some components of the Illinois Works model that will be familiar and some that will be different. The DCO Office of Illinois Works is highly invested in your success. At the same time, the Illinois Works performance-based model has been structured to leverage the accountability component of a performance-based model while creating a structure that provides additional funding opportunities. So here's a very important fact, okay? And we will discuss in a minute the difference between Illinois Works and other models. But not only do we emphasize accountability here with this model, we also give and encourage and incentivize grantees that perform well to receive even more funding than they were originally allocated if they're doing a good job out there, okay? If we can move on to the slide deck, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, performance-based payment model. So how does our model work? The performance-based payment model utilized by Illinois Works is rooted in the belief that grant funding should be based on an organization's tangible impact in the community. In other words, we are looking for results. We are looking for outcomes. We do not want to engage community members who happen to be the taxpayers that pay the taxes that we utilize for these programs to produce results for them, for their communities, and for the state in general. The combination of performance-based and reimbursement models means that metrics dictate the amount available for reimbursement, and grantees must still submit allowable expenses to access that funding. What does that mean? Our model is performance-based, and the way you can more easy think about this is, on the one hand, the revenue, the money that is available for you to use, you are producing it through your performance, okay? And we will talk about how we do that on a monthly basis, how we do those calculations, talk about that in a minute. But on the other hand, the other side of the coin is you may have $100,000 that you have earned through your performance and that are available to you. But GATA, which is the law that regulates in the state of Illinois how grants are managed, says that we can only reimburse you for allowable expenses. So, work very hard to earn revenue and produce revenue through the performance-based model. But then on the other hand, you got to make sure that you have allowable expenses that you are submitting through your PFR in order to access that money that you're earning. I can tell you something that is a little disappointing to me, because I worked for 20 years before when I did programming, workforce programming, worked for 20 years with performance-based models. We always made sure that we never left any money on the table, meaning if we earned $1, we submitted allowable expenses for $1, okay? We have had the unfortunate situation in the last couple of years with Illinois Works that our grantees have produced a significant amount of revenue through their performance, but have not submitted enough expenses, allowable expenses, to use that revenue. So there is a significant amount of money that is being left on the table by grantees because they earned the money, but they have not used it. The first year we had about $1.5 million that were left on the table. In this second year, the program year that just ended, is about a little bit over $1 million. It may be more by the time we do the closeout and we release the closeout money. So, it's two sides to the coin. For any of you that are administrators or fiscal people, just think about it. On the one side of the coin is earning enough money through your performance, and on the other side of the coin is having enough expenses that are allowable to use the money that you're earning from one side or from the other side of the coin. So how is our model different, our performance-based model different than other models? If grantees exceed their metrics, they can earn funding beyond their initial grant award. In other words, if you are exceeding expectations, if you had an allocation of $550,000 through your award, you may be able to end up with $600,000 for the year because you are exceeding your metrics, and that is allowable in our model. Okay, so it's an incentive for those grantees that perform well. Due to live real-time reporting through the Illinois Works reporting system, DCO will make disbursements on a monthly basis. In other words, as I mentioned earlier, if you submit your PFRs on a monthly basis, we can pay them on a monthly basis instead of having to wait a whole quarter for you to be able to get your money. Grantees also have the right to appeal to Illinois Works if a grantee believes they missed their outcome metrics due to a variable outside of their control. This happens quite often, actually. Sometimes you have a grantee, you have an enrollee, a participant that comes into your program, says, I want to be an electrician. And while they're still in your program, they apply to the electricians and they get accepted into the DOL registered apprenticeship program. That individual technically did not complete your program. You could definitely claim a transition on the individual if they got accepted into the electrical DOL registered apprenticeship program. That would mean that you would lose out on the completion metric. That may be $3,000 that you're losing out on, for that individual. However, you can appeal that situation and say, here's the case with this individual, and here's the evidence for my case. We will review it, and if it's a good case, we may approve it, and if we approve it, we would grant you a completion and appeal instead of a regular completion, right? So there is a possibility in our model to appeal some of these metrics if they were missed because of situations that are beyond your control. So those three items make our model very unique and different than other performance-based models. Any questions before we proceed to funding benchmarks?
No questions in the chat.
Okay, great. So let's proceed to the funding benchmarks. So there are 4 funding benchmarks. I'm sorry, if someone had a question? Okay, great. So let's proceed to the funding benchmarks that we use in our model. There are 4 funding benchmarks: enrollment, completion, transition, and closeout reports. So each of these are connected to a percentage share of the overall grant award. You will see the formula in a minute so that you can see how those are allocated. Because this is a performance-based model, not an outcome-based model, organizations can receive reimbursement funds related to benchmarks while working toward their goal. So what does that mean? Let's assume that your goal is to, for the year, your goal is to train 50 people. We will allocate a enrollment, amount for 50 people. Divide that total dollar amount by 50 people. You can, let's assume in the first cohort, you enrolled a total of 28, okay? You didn't meet the 50, so we don't have to wait until you met the 50 to pay you for the 28. We will pay you for the 28. The second cohort, you put in 25 other individuals. Well, you exceeded your goal of 50, and we will pay you for the 50 plus the extra ones that you included there. So as a result, you can get extra money. So we're not waiting until you meet the 50 for us to release your money. As you progress, we will pay you for the amount of progress that you're making. Additional funding beyond their initial grant award is available if grantees exceed outcome metrics. I think there is someone in the background that is not muted. If someone could please mute themselves, I would appreciate it. For grantees exceed outcome metrics based on their participation. You can find information related to a performance-based model starting on page 200 of the grantee manual. Okay, after funding benchmarking, you must then submit allowable expenses in order to get paid. Again, we can only pay you once you have earned. Earning is one side of the coin. You need to, the other side of the coin is submitting your allowable expenses so that they can be reimbursed against the money that you earned. So funding benchmarks, each of the funding benchmarks is divided by the program's goal for the number of enrolled participants, the number of participants who successfully complete, the number of participants who successfully transition. These goals are outlined in each organization's grant agreement and work plan. So it's very important that you read your grant agreement as soon as you get it, and also your work plan. And your grant manager is going to be working with you during this onboarding process to finalize your work plan. And that's what we will be using for compliance and also for paying you. By dividing the funding benchmark amount by its respective participant goal, the per participant allowance is calculated. And let's go through the formula, and then we'll see some examples in a minute so that you can see that. This is the typical funding formula for Illinois Works. Enrollment is 25% of your grant. Completion is 30% of your grant. Transition is 35% of your grant. Closeout reports is 10%. You add all of that up and it equals 100%. What does that mean? Let's assume that you got a grant for $100,000. Then enrollment, you will get $25,000 for enrollment. Completion, $30,000, and on you go. Something that is important to highlight is that your transition money is actually earned in a two-step process. There is a preliminary verification of a primary transition, which receives 75% of the money. And then once we do the final verification, you receive the other 25% of the money. We will discuss that more in detail in the next section. Just wanted to highlight that. Completion and transition together represents 65%. You will notice I had mentioned earlier that our model is based on the fact that we want to have outcomes for these communities and these individuals. That is the reason why completion and transition combine are 65%. It's a large percentage of your grant allocation, particularly transitions, which is the ultimate goal of Illinois Works, is 35%, which is the highest allocation that you will see on this grant. Capital advances are only available, as I mentioned earlier, the first year of the grant award through the NOFO process. Capital advances for organizations entering as Track 1 or Track 2 grantees are 8% and result in an equivalent reduction to the closeout report funding benchmark. So if you requested a capital advance, you actually got 8% of your 10% for closeouts for capital advance, okay? Capital advances for organizations entering Illinois Works as an accelerator program or Track 3 are 20% and impact all the funding benchmarks. I'll mention a little more in a minute, but it's a little different. The formula used for accelerator programs is a little bit different than the regular formula used for Track 1 and grantees, which most of you will be. Any questions, Anna, before I proceed to discuss the accelerator program?
No, not in the chat. Thank you.
Okay, great. So the accelerator program, what is the accelerator program? It's also known as Track 3. It's designed to cultivate new workforce development programs across the state of Illinois through a comprehensive approach to develop their capabilities in all aspects of programming and administration. This program, which lasts 1 year, places limits on grantee participant enrollment while providing them with increased support and funding along with a larger capital advance. As a result, a different funding formula is used for grantees that are part of the accelerator program. Just something that you should keep in mind. To be an accelerator program, you either came into the network as an accelerator program. We negotiated that with you from the very beginning and said, we can only give you funding if you become an accelerator program, or if you are an existing program and had challenges with performance, we might have put you into the accelerator program and said, we can only renew your grant if you are part of the accelerator program. So here's the formula on the screen for the accelerator program. You will notice is a little different than the formula for the regular grantees. Capital advance is 20%, enrollment is 21, completion is 26, transition is 31, and the closeout is only 2%. All of that added is 100%. And again, this is done to develop programs, very small organizations and small programs that need a lot of development, but that we are interested in developing because of who they serve or where they're located in the state. Okay, so moving on to monthly outcome reviews and fund disbursement. The per participant allotment I had mentioned earlier is a result of the funding benchmark percentage divided by the funding benchmark participant goal. So let's assume that you have a goal of 25 participants and the enrollment amount that we're allocating is 100,000. You will see that per participant allotment in that case is $4,000 per participant. What does that mean? That means that once we verify that you have enrolled an individual and that you have submitted and followed the process and submitted the required documentation, your grant manager would release on a monthly basis $4,000 for that individual. If that individual was verified, then you have earned $4,000. And as I mentioned earlier, that's only one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is to be able to use those $4,000, you need to submit allowable expenses through your PFR. So this information, you will be able to receive all of that information through the monthly compliance review. I'll explain in a minute how exactly that works. Once again, if you want to see more guidance related to this particular item, You can find it on page 201 of the grantee manual. Okay, so how exactly do you get paid for expenses? Let's assume that you have earned enough funding through your performance. How do you get paid for allowable expenses? You will submit first your expenses through a PFR on a monthly basis. The OGM office will review your expenses and determine what amount of the expenses are allowable. And this is something that is very important, and it comes up all the time. Just because you have expenses does not mean that they're allowable. You need to ensure that they're allowable expenses. Give you an example. One of our wraparound services is you can certainly do car repairs for an individual that may need their car to be repaired while they're in the program so they can go to job sites or attend the program. There are limits on how much you can pay for that. The grantee manual specifically says it's an allowable expense. However, these are the limits. If you exceeded that limit and did not get pre-approval from your grant manager, it is very possible that OGM will flag it and say, this expense is not allowable. You spend $2,500. You could have only spent this much. We're going to give you the much that was allowable. The rest, we cannot pay you back for. So that's the reason why it's so important to ensure that the expenses that you're submitting are allowable. They may also ask for backup documentation, and you need to provide it. Otherwise, it may not be an allowable expense. OGM step 3 will compare that amount to the maximum reimbursement amount submitted by the Illinois Works grant manager. So we'll go into this in more detail in a minute, but the grant manager will release a table to OGM on a monthly basis and say, based on grantee X's performance up to now, they have $200,000 worth of revenue they've earned through their performance, and OGM will compare your expenses compared to that and see if there's enough money there to pay you. If the OGM approved amount is equal to or less than the maximum reimbursement amount submitted by Illinois Works, then those expenses will be reimbursed. Any extra expenses above and beyond the maximum reimbursement amount will be held by OGM until the grantee generates more reimbursement through their grant performance. It is very, very important. Okay, so if you submit more expenses than you have earned, they're not going to kick them back. They're just going to hold them and pay you up to the dollar amount that you have earned, and then hold them until you generate more performance-based funding so that they can pay you those. What if you have more funding than you have expenses? Then they'll just carry over that funding, that earned revenue, until the next month when you submit more expenses. That's just the way the system works. We are the ones that on a monthly basis, we meaning the Office of Illinois Works, is the one that determines the maximum amount available for reimbursement. We do not determine the actual amount that is paid monthly. That is determined by OGM. OGM will be the one to determine if your expenses are allowable or not and how much they're going to pay you. Any questions before I look at a couple of examples?
None in the chat.
Okay, great. So there are 2 examples here. This is a performance-based model based on just the general formula that we discussed. $550,000 grant, enrollment goal is 50, completion goal, which is 85% of enrollment. It's always going to be 85% of enrollment is 43. Primary transition goal is 70% of enrollment. It's always going to be 70%. Those are the required metrics for Illinois Works. It's 35. You will notice here program enrollment is 25% of the grant, program completion is 30, transitions is 35, closeout is 10%. That adds up to $100,000. You will see the allocations in the next column, how that 25 is divided, is multiplied, 25% multiplied by 550, and it'll give you a particular dollar amount. The per participant allotment is based on the goals that I mentioned earlier, and it gives you a number there. You will notice that the most generous, obviously the most generous amount of money you can earn is on the transition. Second most generous is on the completion, and third more generous is on the enrollment. The closeout reports here represent $55,000. So Brian was mentioning earlier that it's important to ensure that you go through the closeout successfully, because not only does that verify all the data for our purposes, you could then receive the other $55,000 on your grant. Okay, so the next column is the actual performance by the grantee. Instead of enrolling 50, they enroll 52. So you can see they made more money from enrollment than originally allocated. They made 143 versus 137.5. Then they completed 43. You can see they made exactly the same dollar amount. Then they met the transition number, and they also had some alternative construction in secondary transitions. As you can see from this particular case, they also finalized their closeout report successfully. They received a total of $578,050 compared to 550, which was their original allocation. So this example here is what I've been mentioning earlier. If you perform well and exceed metrics, you can definitely make more money through your grant than originally allocated. So that's the first example. The second example, it's more an accelerator example, and it basically shows you a similar case, but how different it is based on the formula that we use for the accelerator program instead of the regular program. Moving on now, as I mentioned earlier, just want to remind you that there is a per participant allotment. You definitely want to read about it. And these numbers are determined based on the monthly compliance review, which we're gonna discuss now. So at the end, the Illinois Works grant manager will check each grantee's outcome metrics, and based on the organization's progress toward their goal, will alert OGM of the maximum amount that will be available for reimbursement. We will review the monthly compliance review in greater detail in the next section of this webinar, which is section 13, programmatic monitoring, but I just wanted to give you some basic details here. Monthly compliance report. There are 2 reports you'll be receiving as a result of the monthly compliance review. Illinois Works will conduct monthly compliance reviews to ensure grantees are adhering to program expectations based on the grant agreement, the approved work plan, and the 2024 grantee manual's guidance. During this monitoring process, the Illinois Works grant manager will export participant data from the Illinois Works reporting system. And I want to emphasize here, as we mentioned earlier, Brian mentioned the importance of entering this data real time in IWRS and ensuring that the data is accurate. Well, every month, your Illinois Works grant manager will export the data from IWRS for your program and determine your progress toward enrollment, completion, and primary transition goals. That's how you know how much money you have earned through your performances. If you enter the information in IWRS, we're able to export it, verify it. We give you credit, then we'll issue these 2 reports. And I'll give you more details in a minute about the reports, but that's how you'll know how much money you've earned. At the same time, based on the data entered in IWRS, the grant manager will assign one of the following overall progress rating based on the grantee's progress towards their enrollment, completion, and primary transition goals. So once we do that monthly compliance review, you will end up with a progress rating. And there are 4 progress ratings that you can have at a particular moment in time for Illinois Works. Excellent progress. That means that you are exceeding the required outcomes. You are at more than 100% of the required outcomes at the approved timeline. You could also have good progress, which means that you are between 76% and 100% of the required outcome at the approved timeline. And you are making significant progress and likely to meet the required outcome. Inadequate progress, that's when the red flags start to come up for Illinois Works. Inadequate progress, you are between 50% and 75% of the required outcomes at the approved timeline. And even though you're making some progress, you are not likely to meet the required outcome by the end of the program year. Poor progress is when you are at less than 50% of the required outcome at the approved timeline, and you're not making enough progress towards meeting the required outcomes, and you're definitely not likely to meet the required outcomes. So those are the 4 categories that your grant manager, it's a rating they'll give you, and you will see it on your monthly report. Excellent progress, good progress, inadequate progress, poor progress. I can tell you that if you are in inadequate progress or poor progress, those statuses will trigger technical assistance, will trigger coaching, can trigger corrective action, and we'll discuss those in a minute. The overall compliance rating that is provided to grantees on a monthly basis is determined by the data report in IWRS. Determining which metrics are reviewed each month is based on the grantee's approved work plan. And as I mentioned, during your onboarding, you will do a work plan that will get approved. And based on that work plan is how we're determining at what point in your programming you should be in a given month. If there are changes that are needed for the work plan, you need to request those and negotiate those in advance with your grant manager, not after you've done something. It needs to be way in advance for you to negotiate a change to your work plan. The monthly progress reports provides the grantee with an increase to the reimbursement cap based on that month's review. Information detail in the progress report is only a snapshot of what was entered in IWRS since the previous month's compliance review. So there are 2 reports you're going to be getting. One is this monthly progress report. You're seeing it on your screen right now. That only looks at your progress since the previous month, gives you ratings, and it tells you how much you earned since the previous month. This report, along with the payment worksheet, which we will discuss in a minute, is emailed to the grantee's program administrator on a monthly basis, typically the 2nd week of the month. So again, this is happening on a monthly basis. Your program administrator is receiving this report. I would encourage you to really take that report seriously, look at it. We identify issues there, flags that need to be addressed, and those can definitely be successfully addressed if you pay attention to what the report contains. The second document that you will receive is called the payment worksheet. The payment worksheet is a monthly aggregate report, whereas the previous report, the monthly progress compliance report, was a snapshot of the month. This second one is an aggregate report outlining the total number of enrollments, completions, and primary transitions, alternative construction transitions, and secondary transitions. This report also provides grantees with a detailed outline of their custom performance-based payment funding formula and reimbursement maximum and grant award information. You can refer to the grantee manual section 11 for more information regarding the performance-based payment funding formula that we just discussed, and also for more information about this report. So again, how do we determine the monthly reimbursement maximum that you will be able to get paid when you submit your expenses? The per participant allotment for enrollment and completion is multiplied by the number of participants who have newly met the funding benchmark stage at the end of each month, as documented by compliance review conducted by the Illinois Works grant manager. For transitions, however, the participant allotment is based on the participants' progress towards a transition. I mentioned that there are 2 steps in that, and I'll discuss those in a minute again. If you recall from the Grantee Manual Session 2, when we spoke about transitions, there are 3 types of transitions. The primary transition is when a participant applies to and eventually is accepted into a DOL registered apprenticeship program. And I want to emphasize that the primary transition is the reason why this program exists. Getting them employment in manufacturing, sending them to college, the military, those are all good, but that's not the main reason why this program exists. This program exists by law to transition individuals to DOL registered apprenticeship program. So once again, this is the ultimate goal of the program, and as a result produces the highest per participant allotment. A primary transition is awarded based on a 2-step verification process containing a preliminary and a final step. A preliminary verification of a primary transition will be awarded at 75% of the primary transition per participant allotment, When the final verification is completed, the remaining 25% of the primary transition per participant allotment will be made available for reimbursement. The next type of transition is alternative construction transitions, which are reimbursed at 70% of the primary transition per participant allotment. This is when a participant does not go into a DOL registered apprenticeship program, but instead secures permanent employment in construction, the utilities, or other construction related work. This is a new type of transition for this year, was not there last year, but is being done this year at the request of some of our grantees and to address some job opportunities that we've seen for our graduates. The final type of transition is a secondary transition, which is reimbursed at 50% of the primary transition per participant allotment. We will also cover more information related to the verification process for this transition in this webinar. However, again, if you want more information related to these transitions, how they work, how they're verified, you can go to section 13, programmatic monitoring in the grantee manual to find more information. The final benchmark is related to the closeout process referenced in the last section. As discussed, closeout reports are not related to a per participant allotment. They are based on a grantee's completion of required closeout reports and finalizing data entry in IWRS. Completion of the closeout process is worth 10% of the overall grant award. At the end of each month, the Illinois Works Grant Manager will run a compliance report. This allows Illinois Works Grant Managers to check each grantee's outcome metrics and based on the organization's progress towards their goal, alert OGM of the maximum amount available for reimbursement. If you want more information related to this, you can go to the grantee manual on page 203, or you can look at table 27 that will provide some more information and guidance related to this. Final item that we'll discuss today, I mentioned that a unique component of our performance-based model is the appeal process that exists. Throughout the grant year, instances may arise when an outcome metric is impacted by circumstances outside of the control of the grantee. And I want to circle back about this because I've seen a lot of appeals that come through. An individual that came in the program decided while in the middle of the program that in fact instead they wanted to be a chef is not something that we would consider outside of the control of the grantee. They may drop out of the program at that point. That's more an issue of ensuring that you're properly interviewing individuals and ensuring that their career alignments, career interests align with the interests of our program. If you accepted someone that wanted to open a restaurant and then you're wondering why they dropped out in the middle of the program, that is not something that we would consider a circumstance outside of the control of the grantee. These are instances where you've really done what you needed to do and something happens that is outside of your control, and as a result, you cannot meet the metric. These instances are primarily related to individual participant outcomes. In these cases, Illinois Works will accept an outcome metric appeal from the grantee. Grantees are required to submit Exhibit 14, Performance-Based Payment Appeal Form, to their Illinois Works Grant Manager. The appeal form allows up to 3 participant appeals per form. All relevant documentation should be submitted with appeal forms to ensure speedy determinations by Illinois Works. If approved, the outcome metrics and related reimbursement will be detailed in the succeeding compliance review. Once you submit it, we will review it. We will notify you if it's approved or not. Just keep in mind that we review each of these as not just a paperwork situation. We discuss them in our weekly grant management meetings to determine if it deserves approval or not. Again, Exhibit 14 is what you would use. Page 205 of the grantee manual has guidance related to that. Okay, are there any questions before we go on break?
Not on this section, but there was another question about the cohort files, and so my understanding is that the cohort file is the participant files as outlined in the grantee manual. but just organized by cohort. Is that correct or no?
No, there are typically two files. There's one, let's assume you have 25 participants in your cohort. Let's assume it's cohort one. You should have 25 files for those individuals, okay? One for each of the individuals that enroll. Then you should have a cohort file because there may be instances where a particular um, document, if they're not enrollee, you don't necessarily need to have a file for them, but maybe someone applied, maybe someone submitted some documentation, but they're not enrollees. So as a result, they were not accepted. Maybe you denied their acceptance into the program. Maybe you accepted them, but they all of those documents can be put in a cohort file where you have all of these miscellaneous documents that are relevant to that cohort, but we may ask for those documents once we come and do a field monitoring visit, or accountability may ask for those documents when they're doing an audit, right? So, you know, there are files for each of the enrollees that you have, what they've done, they progress through your program, all of the information required for them. And then you have this general cohort file where you have miscellaneous documents related to that cohort that are important and that you may be asked to provide. The other thing I would put in that one, or in just the general Illinois Works file, would be the resumes of your staff. The guidance is that you need to have updated resumes for those individuals once we visit and we request them that they're available. So that's what I would do.
Thanks, Norman. That was the last question, and it is time for a break.
Okay, great. So it's time for a break. We're at 11:55, running just a little bit back. So I would say we take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back at 12 and finalize the sections that we have left.
All right, I'm showing noon, so we'll get started again. We are running a few minutes late, so I'm really going to emphasize some of the most important pieces of Section 12 using data for program management and continuous improvement. We're going to talk about the Illinois Works continuous improvement model, talk about using the program improvement plan template that's included in your program manual. Talk about the steps in the performance management process, identify different approaches for the program evaluation, and talk about how we try to ensure all participants take the participant satisfaction survey to and learn how to utilize the results of those survey responses. Again, this is section 12 of the grantee manual. Excuse me. Go to the next slide. So you all, as you're operating your programs, you're responsible for program management, and that just means you're, have all these different activities that you're doing that all have the same aim of complying with the program expectations, improving performance, and ensuring that outcomes are met throughout this apprenticeship life cycle that we've seen multiple times. And as part of that program management process, you're expected to include a continuous improvement process as your participants go through this life cycle. And continuous program improvement is the ongoing assessment of performance outcomes with the goal of identifying opportunities for incremental and innovative enhancements to each phase of the life cycle. So again, we're trying to improve services and program delivery. It's important to understand that when we talk about programming improvement, we're not talking about punishment for things that you might be doing wrong. It's really about learning from what we're doing as we're doing it. You might find areas where you're struggling with, participant attendance, from completion, passing exams and things like that. And in those cases, we can look at ways to improve. But your program also might be hitting it out of the park, exceeding all of your benchmarks, exceeding all of your goals. And even in a case like that, you should be asking it, how can we do it even better? We're always looking at how to improve what we're doing. And so there's Exhibit 9 in your manual is a program improvement plan that kind of looks at how you're tracking your metrics around enrollment, completion, et cetera, and the demographics, and then sort of lays out a way you might think about ways to think about improving your program. And so quick Mentimeter here, how has your program been using continuous improvement models? Maybe many of you are just getting started, but we'll talk about some ways that you might be doing this. Yeah. And so this the Illinois Works continuous improvement model, again, is sort of this life cycle where these first three boxes in this cycle, program performance, measuring outcomes, and benchmarking against program goals. This is really looking at the numbers. Again, we talked about how important it is to capture and enter data accurately. Here's where we're starting to use those data. Just looking at trends in our program, making sure we're meeting our benchmarks and things. But the piece where we really start doing the program improvement work is when we actually are doing things like brainstorming strategies for improvement. we could look at numbers all day, but it's not really going to tell us for the boots on the ground how we're going to improve our program. You can see areas where we're exceeding, you can see areas where we might be falling behind on our benchmarks, but the numbers don't tell us why, first of all, we might be exceeding or lagging our benchmarks. And it's also not going to tell us how we're going to improve it. So these steps of doing things like brainstorming, paying attention to what's going on with your program personnel as well as your participants, and talking to them about ways your program might be improving. That's really where we learn and identify strategies for program improvement. And then just as important as identifying strategies for improvement is actually implementing those strategies. You know, making everything from little tweaks in the way we're doing things to major changes in different approaches or different activities that we're doing. You know, when we identify ways that we think can improve our program, that's not enough. We have to make an effort to implement those new strategies or those new approaches. We have another quick Mentimeter question. What techniques do you use to generate new or innovative ideas to support program success? The last slide had brainstorming. I think that's a good one to start with. Just talking with your staff, with your participants, getting their ideas. People on the ground doing the work are very often the ones with the best ideas. Staff meetings, exactly. Just getting feedbacks, getting ideas from your entire staff. This is not just a management role. This is everybody in the program should be involved in this process. I think your participants are also a really important source of these types of improvement ideas. That's great. Good to see that there. You can also partner with some of the program level, your grant manager, with the program coaches. You know, they've talked to a lot of different grantees, and so they might have some knowledge about things that have worked with other grantees. So make sure you're talking with everyone always about your program improvement and program success. Great. All right. We talked briefly earlier about some of the reports and some of the dashboards that are available in the Illinois Works reporting system. I'm going to talk about this quickly. I think you'll get further sessions about these specific tools within Illinois Works led by SIU. But one of the things you're going to be able to tell from your Illinois Works system are performance gaps. So you have your program goals and you have your actual performance outcomes. Any difference from that where your performance is lagging behind your goal is a performance gap. And so here's an area where we're really going to look at improvement steps to see how we can close those performance gaps and try to meet our performance goals with our actual performance outcomes. We identify these through the programmatic dashboard in the Illinois Works reporting system. The dashboard is going to have a variety of data about your participant life cycle. Some of it might be flagged. It'll be shaded in red as a red flag, like you're falling behind your program goals with that. And that may be, in all of those steps of the participant life cycle that we talked about, from intake, participant engagement, how are you bringing participants into your program? How are you identifying their needs for supportive services and addressing those supportive service needs? As your participants are going through your instruction, making sure they're earning the credentials that they need to be earning, that they're completing all of the requirements for the program and making a successful completion. And then, as we know, our engagement with our participant doesn't end when they complete our program. We are going to track them into the labor force, hopefully into registered apprenticeship programs, help them with transition services into those registered apprenticeship programs, or other outcomes, as Norman described earlier. We also will track provider and employer or apprenticeship sponsor relations. How are we building relationships with the folks that are going to hire the completers of our program? And there's some sections in the program manual. Table 30 walks through the dashboard sections. And table 31 talks about active and long-term tracking on page 210 of the grantee manual. There's also a follow-up dashboard. As I said, our relationship with our participant doesn't end when they complete our program of instruction. We're tracking them into, hopefully into the labor force or into our apprenticeship programs after they leave. And our dashboard tracks, how many Exeters have moved into registered apprenticeship, how many have applied for but not yet entered into. They might be on a waiting list for an apprenticeship program. And then once they get into those apprenticeship programs, how are they progressing through that to ultimately complete those registered apprenticeship programs? The program will also do some long-term tracking. Some of this we try to follow with follow-up contact with our Exeters, but also we'll try to do some data matching with other data sources to see what their employment outcomes, how they're making it through registered apprenticeship programs, and ultimately to journey person status. Talk about some key outcome metrics. So as you all know, Norman mentioned these earlier, that we expect at least 85% of the individuals enrolled into the program will successfully complete the pre-apprenticeship program. And 70% of those enrolled will ultimately be hired and enroll into a DOL registered apprenticeship program. There may be other metrics negotiated during your grant agreement